say to the world and to your heart. Open up your eyes and let your spirit start. Say yes to the dreams you hold inside. Let your soul be your guide.
In today's complex mortgage world, finding the right direction can be challenging. That's where Lighthouse Advisors comes in. With over 25 years of experience, we provide fractional leadership and executive oversight, guiding companies through transitions, growth, and innovation. From IMBs to brokers to credit unions to tech firms, our team of seasoned professionals is here to shine a light on solutions, ensuring your business thrives in every environment. At Lighthouse Advisors, we don't just guide, we empower. Together, let's create a ripple of success across the industry. Email us today at laura@lighthouseadvisors.com.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Wednesday Wisdom. Today, we are joined by the incredible Brandonn Dukes. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Lender Price. Brandonn, thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait to hear all of your insights and wisdom. We'd like to kick it off with an easy question. We'd love to hear about what is one of the best pieces of advice or something you learned from someone, and how has that influenced your life?
That is a good question. It's not as easy as you think because you meet a lot of amazing people in this industry, and you do. If you're thoughtful, you ask for that advice. You seek it out, and so. But this one actually came from my pre-mortgage days, and one of the first roles I ever had. I was with the associates, oddly enough.
Oh, I remember them.
Oh yeah, and it's essentially as you look to check on your career, several career tracks have specific tracks in consulting and accounting, but most don't. You have to sit there and try to seek. And the advice was, well, you don't get anything unless you ask for it. But if you ask for it, you better deserve it. So it's too often that people walk in and I want this promotion, I want this, and they don't necessarily have the backup to support it, or they can't really describe why they think they deserve it. And but if you've got your head down and you're working hard, a lot of times that can be considered, all right, if you're not asking for it, then you're content in what you're doing. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and you're doing it so well that we just want you to keep doing it. And then all of a sudden, a year or two goes by, and you're kind of looking around saying, well, why haven't I been promoted? Why haven't I been offered this opportunity to work on something else? And unless you speak up, like maybe they just don't know. Maybe they don't know you have those aspirations, or maybe they don't know that you have the capabilities or the interest of doing something different. And so really that was very good advice early in my career that I've passed on many times and utilized myself.
I love that advice, and what a great discussion point even to go into, right? And don't even get me started about the difference of being remote, because the world has changed so much that what you just said about, back when everyone was in an office, even when your head was down, you were seen. People, the executives or the owners or the leaders or whoever still might see you in a meeting at your desk, sitting in a conference room, right? And although maybe if you're not raising your hand, you still had an opportunity to be seen and heard, and maybe somebody would tap you on the shoulder. But the world has changed so much now from a remote perspective that this generation that is coming into business that maybe never had the opportunity to be seen other than on a Teams screen or a Zoom screen or whatever else that is, it's even more difficult now that you really do have to advocate for yourself. You have to raise your hand and say, yes, I volunteer for that project, or I volunteer to do that extra work, or I volunteer to learn something different. So, Brandon, what a great discussion, because, even what you just said, yes, it was challenging before. Now you can multiply that by so much of a bigger factor, because so many times, and I work with a lot of women in the mortgage industry, and it's even harder where a lot of young women, they have difficulty kind of chiming in and sharing their voice, because they're like, well, it's awkward, I don't know how to jump into the Zoom meeting, and I'm like, put your little hand up. Put your little hand up in your reaction, right? Raise your hand and give your perspective, because if you just sit there with a smile on your face, they have no idea what your capabilities are or what you're looking to do in a career track. So I love that advice. What great, what a great advice there. Now I want to roll right into, because this ties directly into the next question. Now I want to go into leadership, right? So let's keep on that track, right? I'd like to know, what do you think one of the most important traits of a leader? And I want to kind of tie into what you just said, right? And so how do we tie into recognizing that maybe that diamond in the rough, or maybe that person that's a little apprehensive of being the advocate for themselves, or taking on that added work because maybe they don't have that confidence, or they're a little holding back? I'd love to hear, what is your advice out there for the leaders or people that have that ability to kind of keep your eyes open and your ears open and be aware? Because, when I think about the impact that we have on others, like it could be that one conversation, or it could be that one opportunity, or it could be that one door that we open for someone, right? As leaders, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I remember teeing this up a little bit, and you think about that trait in all the different leaders that I've seen throughout my career. I honestly believe empathy is probably the most cherished trait of a leader, because it's really hard to guide someone when you don't see it from their perspective. It's hard to look at that someone who you're giving that advice to say, hey, if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. But what if you knew that they were going through something, or they just had a personality trait that just really limited their ability to raise their hand? Like you said yourself, hey, if you're not raising your hand and you're not, being, including yourself into the conversation, that's really hard for some people. And if you aren't empathetic to that, you might dismiss them as someone who, they're not going to make an impact, or they're not going to do it. But maybe if you reached out and talked to them about it and said, hey, I noticed you're not raising your hand. What can we do to change that? Maybe you kick off the conversation, so it's not trying to insert yourself, but maybe you're starting it, and or maybe we can get you involved by just asking a direct question of you within the meetings. And as a leader, I think it's important to do that for your people and really see it from their perspective, because at the end of it, maybe they have the same goals as the person sitting next to them, but they're coming at it from two different places, and it's really hard. It's really hard to give the exact same advice to everybody. Because you just don't really know what they're going through, or potentially it's nothing that they're going through. It's just simply a personality trait that's inherent in them, and those are really, really difficult to change, especially as you get later in life. I know how difficult that can be.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was speaking to a gentleman that I worked with previously, reached out to me yesterday. And he said to me, he's on the sales, he's on origination side, and he runs like an entire region for a large lender in the mortgage industry. And he said to me, Laura, I've come to the realization that I am just not good with emotional intelligence. He's like, here I am, I'm in my late 40s. He's like, I've crushed it in sales. I've built regions. I've done all this volume. I'm successful. But I really have no EQ.
Yeah.
He's like, and I've come to this self-awareness that I need to be better. and I need to have this awareness for my team. I need to be able to understand where people are coming from and how to get the best out of them, not from an intellectual standpoint, but from a EQ instead of IQ.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating, right? Of how much the world has changed over the years that they say is more important than the IQ, right? That EQ is even more important, and especially as a leader, right?
Mhm.
Especially as a leader. So, Brandonn, what advice would you give? Give that person that I just mentioned a little advice. What is some advice to give someone that they've come to realize maybe they don't have as much empathy as maybe they need as a leader and as a successful person? What's a good way to approach that?
I think it's good to try to find those traits in a colleague and then approach them and say, hey, this is where I'm lacking in some skills that you have. I'd love to just understand your perspective after a meeting, say, hey, what did you think of that? And get that feedback of, well, this person was talking about this and this borrower had this challenge. And, this sales executive is struggling with a certain relationship, and just get that feedback. Because unfortunately, a lot of times the only way you can really learn those traits is to hear from someone else. It's hard to just figure it out on your own. Like that's not as easy to do as people think. But if he's come to the self-awareness that his EQ is limited, then he should have the self-awareness that he can identify somebody that seems to have a better EQ than he does. Get guidance. Like that's the only way you're going to learn it. And maybe getting that perspective and maybe having the opportunity to not just watch them in action, but have them give you feedback and why they saw what they saw, why they said what they said, can help raise his EQ to at least the level in which he feels more comfortable.
I love that. And you are right. And although that sounds easy, as well as I do in our industry, people really struggle with that one, right? Where we're actually saying, hey, I kind of need help with that, right? People are easy. It's easy to say, oh, you're an expert in, how to do securitizations. Can you teach me, how to do securitizations? But when it comes to something like that, people are a little apprehensive where they almost feel like they're broken. I find, right? Like almost like, what's wrong with me that I'm not connecting with that person as well as you are connecting, right? And how do you kind of do that? But you're correct. We know there's so many fabulous people in our industry that will guide and help and support and be open to share. So that is really, really great advice. Okay. So now, Brandonn, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I love, love, love your insights. This is my favorite question. Okay, the way I like to set it up is, let's say I have the magic wand, right? Of whatever crazy thing that you are like, okay, Laura, if you had that magic wand and I had that one wish of my moonshot of something that I would like to do. Doesn't have to just be professional. Could be something, I use if you want to climb Mount Everest or, accomplish something like that. I mean, that's fabulous if that's what it is. But what would that be, Brandonn? If you had no limits, just you could accomplish anything, what would it be?
So I'm a amateur photographer, and I want to hang a photo worthy of Peter Lick in his gallery. Like I want to take a photo that just has that same captures that same essence that he does, and Peter Lick's just one of many amazing photographers that I like to follow. And so instead of investing in a Peter Lick, I invested in upgraded my camera system this past year in the hopes of doing just that. Instead of putting one of his prints on the wall, I want to put one of my own and have somebody ask me, "Is that a Peter Lick? Is that is that what is that? Who is that?" Because that's just I like the medium and have always been fascinated by it, and have always spent a lot of my travel time doing just that. and that's what I'd like.
I love
That's
that.
on.
What kind of photography is that? Is it like landscapes?
It's landscape.
It's
It
landscapes.
is landscape
Love
photography.
that.
I spent many years taking sports photography of my daughters, and obviously portraits. And I do my daughter's senior pictures, and I do their sorority shots, and I do all the fun stuff that you can do on that side. But it's the landscape photography, the sunsets, the sunrises,
I love that.
the beautiful landscapes. This past summer, I was able to go to Sedona, and during a time when the Milky Way was very bright, and I got an amazing photo with the Cathedral Rock in the background, and in the silhouette, and the entire Milky Way across the sky,
Wow.
and it was just epic. That would be my dream, is
I
to
love
have
that.
something like that. That would be my moonshot.
I love that. And that doesn't seem that crazy to me, to be honest. That just seems that it's number one, I'm a big believer that things don't happen unless we say it out loud. Because I believe that when we take our dreams and we expose them to the world, it just makes them one step closer to us. So thank you for sharing that with us, because no matter what, we all know art is in the eye of the beholder, right? And what you just described, and I've been to Sedona many, many times, and in my mind, I was kind of picturing what you were describing, and I could see that in my mind. And I mean, it's heaven on earth, Sedona, and those landscapes and what you just described certainly sounds worthy to me of, and it's that whole thing of, regardless of it's in his gallery, like that's not the important part. Honestly, it's more important that you have it to where people attach it to you. And I will tell you, me and my husband, this, I spend half the year in Arizona. And every time that we go to the little cafes, like for breakfast or whatever, they always have photography like that in all of the little cafes. And there is no reason why that photo that you just said, that sounds like a perfect spot to be in those cafes and on that wall with your name on it, for people to say, hey, I got to check this guy out. What's his website? How can I get more of that? So thank you for sharing that with all of us. And I know you will continue to share your art with the rest of the world. Brandonn, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insights, your leadership, all of these great tidbits, because you have certainly enlightened all of us today. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Laura.
Have a great one.
Coming on. You have a great day.